I have to be really honest here. In all of my years of doing YouTube and reviewing third-party games on both the Switch 1 and the Switch 2, this one that we're about to talk about today is probably the weirdest one that I have ever done. And I know that's weird to say that. I really don't like using the word weird when I'm doing video game reviews because I feel like there needs to be a more definitive word for when we're reviewing games. But that's exactly what my experience of Assassin's Creed Shadows has been onto the Nintendo Switch 2. And in today's video, I want to tell you my thoughts on the game, the way it runs, the performance, the visuals, the textures, all that good stuff, because that's what we've done on this channel with all of the major third-party games for the Nintendo Switch 2, and Assassin's Creed Shadows is probably one of the biggest games to hit the system from a third-party perspective, because I think a lot of people would have thought that this game could not run on the hardware. So how do I feel about it? Let's find out. Going into this, I had really high expectations for this on the Nintendo Switch 2, because we reviewed Star Wars Outlaws a few months ago, and I was talking that that was probably the best Nintendo Switch 2 port onto the system. It was doing truly incredible things. In fact, even after Ubisoft released that game, for the next few months they continued updating it to making it an even better version of the game, doing visual updates, all that type of stuff. So with that in mind, I'm expecting Assassin's Creed Shadows to have the same type of treatment, especially since it was giving to a game like Star Wars Outlaws. Assassin's Creed is probably one of Ubisoft's biggest IPs out there. On top of that, I was actually looking forward to playing this because I have never played an Assassin's Creed game before. It was a series I always looked at, but I never had the time. And I figured now that this was coming to the Switch 2, it was a perfect time to give it a try. So when I talk about this version of the game, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I'm gonna be all over the place with this, because that's exactly what my experience was with this. There was good, there was bad, there was really good, there was really bad, there was really questionable moments. This is literally the most confusing port I have ever played onto the system. And I'm counting the Switch 1. I've played so many third-party Switch 1 games. I mean, you guys saw the series where we reviewed over 100 third-party games. So the fact that I'm saying this about this is really interesting. So let's start off with something that I immediately noticed when I played this onto the Nintendo Switch 2. The visuals of this game when put into docked mode was absolutely incredible. To be completely honest, I was surprised. I thought we were going to be seeing a big quality difference. Now, obviously, if you were to compare this version to like the PlayStation 5 version, you're going to see a difference. But if we were to look at this type of comparison back into the Nintendo Switch 1, this comparison is amazing. So from a visual standpoint, I was really impressed with what Ubisoft did. There was never really a moment that I was like, wow, I'm playing the Switch 2 version. Because visually, it looked really good, and I was surprised by that. I would say, honestly, from a visual standpoint, this actually looked better than what Star Wars Outlaws did on the Nintendo Switch 2, which I wasn't really expecting that. If anything, I thought it might be a little bit worse, just considering the difference between Assassin's Creed and Star Wars Outlaws. But then we go into an issue with the game: the cutscenes. The cutscenes for Assassin's Creed Shadows is all over the place when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2. This is probably, in my opinion, when you notice the most with the frame rate, because the frame rate can be all over the place depending the cutscene that you're in. For example, I was at the start of the game. The cutscenes that was happening in the beginning were literally all over the place. It was definitely dipping below 30 frames, and it was very noticeable. In fact, some of the cutscenes were so bad, it made me question for probably like half a second, like, oh, I'm playing the Switch 1 version. Because that type of experience is something you would have gotten into a Switch 1 version. Obviously, this game didn't come to the Switch 1. I'm just saying that this type of experience is stuff that you would see with some third-party games on the Switch 1. But as I continued playing through Shadows, I noticed that the visuals were still really good. There were times, depending what area I was in, that the frame rate would be pretty bad. But something that I thought was even more weird about this is the textures. The textures at times, really, really good. and then out of nowhere, it's really bad. Like, for example, there will be a blood splatter that doesn't even look like blood. Like, it looks that bad from a texture standpoint that you don't realize it's blood. The only reason why you realize it's blood is because there's a body over it. But then there's other parts in shadows that the textures don't look like that. That's why I'm saying that this is super weird. I also wanted to talk about the loading screens. You know, one of my complaints of Star Wars Outlaws when it came to the Switch 2 version is I felt the loading screens were a lot more noticeable when it comes to the wait times compared to other third-party games out there. When it comes to the loading screens of this is 20 times better. To be completely honest, I don't feel like they're that noticeable until you start up the game. Throughout the whole game, when you have loading screens, it's really not that noticeable, and I'm quite impressed what Ubisoft was able to do, considering how big this game is. Which I think, once again, it's weird to say that this game is loading faster than Star Wars Outlaws, considering that I feel like Star Wars Outlaws would be an easier thing to do when it comes to loading screens, compared to something like this. But I'm not a game developer, so what do I know? And so I decided to play around with the handheld mode of this game, which for whatever reason, they decided to add features to where you can use the touchscreen, which I don't know. I don't know if this is just me. I don't feel like anyone's going to be using the touchscreen for a Nintendo Switch 2 game. I remember trying to use it for Cyberpunk, and I was like, yeah, this is kind of cool. But then I thought to myself, why did we add this? Who asked for this? Is this something that we're actually going to use? But Ubisoft did a lot of work with the touchscreen. But what they didn't do a lot of work on was, in my opinion, the handheld mode of this game. Because handheld mode is all over the place. Like, this is probably the weirdest experience I've seen from a third-party game. So for example, I was in a town in Assassin's Creed Shadows, and when I played it in handheld, it looked absolutely horrible in handheld mode. Like, from a graphic standpoint, docked in handheld, it was very noticeable. If I'm to be honest, I don't like that I'm making this comparison, but once again, it felt like I was playing a Switch 1 game when I did handheld mode. And when I say a Switch 1 game, a third-party port of a Switch 1 game, which those that have played a lot of third-party games will probably get what I'm saying there. But then when we jump to like a cutscene, the cutscenes actually looked really good in handheld mode. And then certain areas in handheld mode looked a lot better. To be completely honest, it felt like the graphics were changing depending where I was. And the resolution definitely felt like it was changing depending where I was. If I was to make a comparison of what it felt like, I think to me, it reminded me of when I was playing Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in handheld mode. Which, if you guys don't know, when you played Xenoblade 2 on the Switch 1 in handheld mode, the resolution would be changing all the time in handheld mode. I think there's a lot of memes about this game in handheld mode when it comes to Xenoblade 2, and that experience felt like was what I was having with Assassin's Creed Shadows in handheld mode, which was just really weird, especially considering at the times that it could be really, really good. Which, truthfully, I feel like a lot of the issues that I'm talking about here is going to be fixed. Considering that Ubisoft is still updating Star Wars Outlaws for the Nintendo Switch 2, I think the same treatment is going to be given to Shadows. My only problem is I don't think that this should have been released. In fact, I think Ubisoft rushed to have this out for the Christmas season. You know, it wasn't just until 5 weeks ago when this game got officially announced for the Nintendo Switch 2. We had heard rumors, but we never got the announcement. And I think Ubisoft really pushed to make it happen so they can get that holiday season sales. Especially for it being the first year of the Nintendo Switch 2. A lot of these third-party games are going to sell like crazy just because they released in the first year. It's the same thing that happened with the Switch 1. And I really think Ubisoft was trying to take full advantage of that with Assassin's Creed Shadows. But I really don't like that they released it like this because, in my opinion, we gave Atlus a lot of crap for what they did with Persona 3 Reload on the Nintendo Switch 2. We were all mad that that was released. The fact that Atlus admitted that they rushed that game to come out for the Nintendo Switch 2. And in my opinion, I think we should hold the same standards for Ubisoft. If we got mad at that, I think we should get mad at them for this. I don't even really feel comfortable giving a score of this port due to the fact of how it was done. If I was to tell you my experience of this game, the best thing I can tell you is that it felt all over the place. If you paid attention to this video, you will notice themes. That there was really good moments, there was really bad moments, there was just very questionable moments. And I felt like that I was going through that the entire time that I played the Nintendo Switch 2 version. So if you want my honest opinion, should you buy this or not? I think it all comes down to if Ubisoft is going to fix this and how soon they're going to fix this. You know, with Persona 3 Reload, we were told that that game was going to get fixed 2 months ago. We're still waiting for the update. And it sounds like, considering that that game should have been released early to mid 2026, that might be when Persona 3 gets that update. But we've also seen how fast Star Wars Outlaws has been receiving updates for the Nintendo Switch 2. Will Assassin's Creed Shadows get that same amount of updates fast? If that's the case, then I would say definitely put your money into Assassin's Creed Shadows for the Nintendo Switch 2. But that's only if they're going to release these updates fast. If you're stuck with this game the way that it is for a month, I would stay away from it, if I'm to be honest with you. And the reason why I say that more comes down to how the handheld mode of this game is. I feel like if you're going out of your way to buy Shadows for the Switch 2, you're mainly doing it for that handheld experience. And the handheld experience is all over the place. And dock mode is too, but handheld is truly a crazy experience. I'm just really hopeful that Ubisoft doesn't release a Switch 2 game like this again, because a lot of people have high respect for Ubisoft right now when it comes to the Nintendo Switch 2, because Star Wars Outlaws was such an amazing port, and I think a lot of people expected the same amount of effort to be put into Shadows. And I think the effort is there, because I don't feel like that this comes down to the power of the Nintendo Switch 2, because we saw as we played through the game how well this game can look and run. It was just at random times, at random cutscenes, that it was just all over the place. And I just think Ubisoft needed probably another month or two to really perfect this port. But I suppose I will go ahead and give you guys a score of my thoughts on this port. I think I have to give this a 6 out of 10. But I think that a lot of what my issues are going to be fixed. My problem is they shouldn't have released it like this. Now, I would like to hear from you guys. I know that this is going to get fixed at some point. Would you guys like me to explore this game again when it gets fixed? Because I asked the same question when Persona 3 Reload came out for the Switch 2. A lot of you guys didn't seem really interested in me to doing an updated review of the port of that. But I could see some interest from you guys wanting me to do an update on this when that actual update happens. Please let me know in the comments down below. I just want to talk about the game for a little bit. Assassin's Creed is kind of weird, not gonna lie. I don't really understand why people like this game so much. But when I was a samurai into this game, dude, I felt so awesome. That was one of the coolest experiences ever. I can't wait to be a samurai again in this game. That was so cool. But everything else in the game, I just don't see the appeal. But that samurai part, I see the appeal there. But guys, I have been talking for way too much. I definitely want to hear from your guys' point of view. Are you picking up Shadows for the Switch 2? Have you already picked it up? How do you feel about the Switch 2 version? Do you share the same type of experience that I have? Because that is really the best way I can describe what Shadows felt like on the Switch 2. I don't want to say it sucks, but I also don't want to say it's amazing, but I also don't want to give it like a mid score, which I guess that's kind of what I did. I just felt like it was really weird. I feel like that should be the score. Weird out of 10. But make sure to backslash that subscribe button, like the video, check out the Twitter, Discord, Instagram, all that good stuff in the description below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.